Hi. Hello. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, great. Okay, so I just noticed I'm not using my stereo speakers. I'm using my computer speakers. My computer speakers, I can use it, but it's not very good. But that's no problem with my microphone. You can hear me. That's better. Okay, so yeah, I'm here in US and at the conference hotel. So we have a good, I assume we have a good connection. So we start here in a second, and just let me open up my my materials that I have prepared for today. And that's the wrong one, wrong file. So I gotta close that. Go to, okay, European Union policymaking. And okay, so let me put the lesson plan and wrong one again. Second here. Okay. And right. So let me open up the notes. And okay, it's 6 o'clock. So let me see what else I have planned here in terms of the exercises for today, and so that we can start working on some interactive exercises here. And and so let's start off with an exercise. I didn't have a chance to get finished at the last class, and which is what's going to be the consequence of this escalating crisis with the European Union on the border of Poland with Belarus. And I think I covered this, but I didn't show you the newspapers material that's been around since then. So let me again, let me go back to that and share my screen and open up the right file and close that and go here and yeah. So I think I did. Let me make sure I'm sharing that screen and go here, share screen, and go here. Okay, so let me close that down there. Cancel that. Call up this file here. That's not the right one. I'm looking for the files that I have on my computer. And okay, so why doesn't it? Okay, so I think you can see this, but just to make sure that you can, let me open it again here. So the question is, do you think that basically with the European crisis with Poland and Belarus in particular, that's going to lead to a big escalation in the broadening and deepening integration of the European Union? I'm going to jump ahead a bit here. When you get to the last chapter in the book, we're coming to the end of the textbook, you're going to read in the last chapter of the textbook some predictions about the future of the European Union. And as I mentioned, Jonathan Olson, who is the author of the book, he finished writing and sent the book to be published right at the beginning of 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic was just beginning. And there's no discussion of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact. But and so when you get to the end of the book, you come to the predictions that he has regarding the future of the European Union, and they're pretty mild. They're pretty meek. They're not very optimistic. And this is before the global once in a century COVID-19 pandemic began. And he's writing about he has 5 different predictions regarding the European Union. One is that it will just continue to muddle through and pursue particular policies to emphasize Eurozone integration and not focus on other policy issues so much that are controversial, or that there will be more of increasing difference between core groups in the European Union and outside groups in the European Union. He doesn't make any really bold predictions that the European Union is somehow going to make a quantum leap in its integration. And the reason I mentioned the word quantum leap is that in the previous edition of the book, which I think was published in 2017, back when it was two authors, Jonathan Olson and a man by the name of McCormick. They used to write this textbook together, but this time in 2021, Jonathan Olson took over and McCormick's not involved. But in the 2007 edition of that book, of your textbook, there is a scenario at the end in the last chapter. One of the scenarios that 2017 edition highlights is that there will be a quantum leap in European integration, that Europe will make a bold new move to certainly deepen integration, increase the powers of the European Union institutions, and really change in a fundamental way. And they're writing this in 2017, so it's after the Brexit vote. Yeah, as I recall that book, the book really doesn't talk much at all about Brexit. And I'm trying to remember in that book, do they talk in the 2017 edition, do they talk at all about Brexit? Because the British voted to leave the European Union in June 2016. So as I think I recall that book, there's maybe nothing mentioned about or very little at all about Britain leaving the European Union. Because, if the book is published in 2017, I mean, it's finished at least a year earlier. So, but I mean, they still make as one of the 5 different scenarios for what will happen in the future of the European Union. One of them is, there's muddling through and just a cores versus periphery countries, that there'll be a core group that's really moving forward in European integration among the core countries of the European Union. And then they included a discussion of a quantum leap, which implies some big, bold initiatives. Then Olson takes over and writes the next edition and revises the book, and he takes out that quantum leap prediction. And he has these 5 predictions at the end. You can read them. You can read them anytime, right? At the end of the last reading for the semester. That are really mild and kind of pessimistic, that the European Union is mired in inability to move forward. It lacks consensus. It doesn't know what to do. And he might be responding basically to Brexit vote. But the reason I mention this is because since the pandemic started and in early 2020, and then the European Union responded, we do see a quantum leap. We are seeing it right now, right? And it's all happened in the last 9 months. Now, these agreements have been reached. They're trying to implement these agreements, and implementation is not easy, right? People can adopt, and states can adopt wonderful policies on paper, but actually, if they're actually able to carry them out, that's whole another set of tasks. And but I mean, there has been a quantum leap, as I mentioned. I mean, in your textbook, they emphasize how the Germans are opposed to European Union issuing bonds. Yes, does somebody have a question? No, okay. That the European Union is issuing bonds. I mean, that the European Union is refusing. The Germans are refusing to allow the European Union to issue bonds. That they don't want. They resist that, and they're doing that. And they're doing it in a big way. Beginning, as we talked about, in June, they started the process of selling to investors hundreds of billions of euro bonds to partly fund the COVID-19 pandemic response recovery program of the European Union, which they call Next Generation EU, is the official trademark name, Next Generation EU. I mean, that's a quantum leap. That's a quantum leap. And that the European Commission is going to sell those bonds. That's a quantum leap. and that the European Central Bank is going to also be printing and selling bonds. I mean, those are all signifying a quantum leap in European integration in response to this global pandemic and these global set of challenges building upon one another, beginning with Brexit, continue early with the migration crisis in 2015 with Brexit, and then the rise of Eurosceptic parties becoming stronger in Europe. What other changes? The fact that the European Commission has gotten the power with the COVID-19 recovery program and Next Generation European Union to supervise and enforce European Union policies immediately, not by suing the country through the European Court of Justice if a country violates its European Union obligations, as I told you before, right? Typically what had to happen was that the European Commission then had to file a lawsuit against that country, and it would take months and years. And, you know, by the time the European Court of Justice made a ruling, the issue's old and may have already been addressed, or it becomes non-significant. But now, just this year, the European Commission can decide yes or no on giving Poland, I think, around 50 billion euros until Poland, for example, stops passing laws. Polish local governments stop passing laws discriminating against LGBTQ people. That's a quantum leap. I mean, that's really a quantum leap. And so it does highlight this importance of elites making this decision, this commitment, this collective commitment to make this European integration process work. You know me, right? I'm always talking about nationalism, and nationalism is critical to understand if you want to understand public opinion in countries, particularly nation states like Germany or Poland. And nationalism constrains and shapes the decisional latitude, the freedom of political decision making that policymakers can do if they want to keep their jobs, right? But we also, at the same time, do not want to underestimate the ability of strategists to respond, building upon their allies, their quiet economic allies, but big economic allies that have built up over 60 years of European integration, beginning with the coal and steel community, or 70 years now, the European coal and steel community, and moving forward in a quantum leap in European integration in response to these global crises. And Olson had no idea this was coming, which is really interesting, right? But again, one of these issue areas that is critically important, aside from, you think about making countries give up, having countries give up their own money, the French franc, the Italian lira, the German Deutschmark. You think about, your money is really important. Money is a daily signifier, indicator of your nationality. Do you use dollars? Do you use Korean won? Do you use, Italian lira? Italians have the lira, and they gave it up to all use the euro. You can imagine how politically challenging that was to do, right? And not all countries have done it. The British were never willing to do it, and they didn't do it. Denmark still hasn't done it. Sweden joined later and hasn't done it. And some countries still haven't joined, even though they're supposed to join the Eurozone, like Poland and Czech Republic. But 19 countries did. So, these are really difficult challenges, but at times we see at the European Union political leadership, because there's this elite consensus among the establishment leaders of these countries that they have to rise to these challenges, or else they're going to be pushed aside by some ugly people, French versions of Donald Trump, German versions of Donald Trump, Italian, they're always there. They're always there in the political system in Italy or Poland or Hungary. Question is, how do those people get power and political support to win elections and get into power? And they do get support, but there are still tremendous economic interests and young people interests. And the European Union tries to build female interests. Women's rights is a big focus of the European Union, to try to make allies to support these European elites in doing what they think they have to do to make European integration continue and proceed and keep peace, at least among the European Union member states. So the next big test is justice and home affairs, because that involves migration. And everybody gets sensitive about migration, including the Koreans. I think we covered this at the beginning of the semester. I think we did it maybe in this class, maybe in another class, right? A couple of years ago, there were lots of reports about how South Korea had a special Jeju Island visa regime where people could go to Jeju Island and support the tourism industry in Jeju Island with I think very easy visa requirements. So there were lots of people coming from Iraq and Syria going to Jeju Island because they knew you could get to Jeju Island without an entry visa or something like that, and then trying to claim asylum in South Korea after they got to Jeju Island. And the Koreans, they said no. They stopped it. My students, I think I asked my students, I think it wasn't this class because it was a bigger class. The students are all against allowing those people to come in from Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria to come to Jeju Island and claim asylum. And I think the South Koreans changed the law. So it's a sensitive topic, and I don't want to use the term rational, irrational. Like we said, Europe needs migration. So does the United States. Those migrants coming from Mexico, they play a critical role in the US economy. Those migrants who come into Europe, they play a critical role there as well. Like they play an important role here in South Korea. I mean, South Koreans know that, South Koreans increasingly won't do difficult, dirty, dangerous work. They'll let people come in from, other countries, poor countries, to do the difficult, dangerous, and dirty work, like work in farming or work in construction. And so, if those migrants are really, really important, even if you paid them a lot of money, Koreans won't do it. Like in Americans, you can pay, offer to pay Americans lots of money to pick tomatoes, but they still won't do it because it's too hard and boring. You pick tomatoes, 12 hours a day during the harvest season. Americans won't do it for $20 an hour. You just won't. Most won't. So you bring in these guest workers who come in seasonally as sort of like a special period, and then they go back home to Mexico, or they stay illegally. But this justice and home affairs issue, this is the next critical issue that the European Union has to face as a critical issue. And the European Union has shown, particularly in the last 9 months, that it can take a quantum leap forward in integration in response to a crisis challenge. And this migration issue is a crisis challenge, not just because of the migrants on the border in Belarus, but for example, as we talked about already in class, Afghanistan is becoming a humanitarian. It's already a humanitarian catastrophe. It's becoming the worst humanitarian disaster in the world, which is saying a lot. These 40 million people, the Americans and their allies have frozen Taliban Afghan bank accounts around the world that they were using for Afghanistan to engage in trade because they don't want the Taliban government to control it. They're making demands on the Taliban. Meanwhile, winter's coming, and there already is a terrible drought in Afghanistan. We're talking about some huge number of people at risk of dying of starvation in Afghanistan. And so people are going to start moving, and they're going to try to get to Europe on a scale comparable to what it was 6 years ago in 2015 and 2016. They're going to go through Iran, they're going to go through Turkey, and they're going to go through Turkey. They're going to go do whatever they have to do to try to get to Europe to survive. And we saw the response of what happened in 2015. I mean, you could make the argument that Brexit vote would not have happened were it not for that big migrant surge in 2015 that people like Nigel Farage and the United Kingdom Independence Party were able to exploit in terms of appealing to the fears and anxieties of many Britons about, as long as you stay in the European Union, sooner or later, all of these hundreds of thousands, even millions of Asians and Africans, sooner or later are going to find a way to get into Britain, even though Britain's not part of the Schengen area. that doesn't allow visa-free travel from the rest of the European Union. It never did into UK. Still, they'll find a way to get in because it's all part of the single market. And so this is a big challenge. And so how is the European Union going to respond? And it's really a critical issue. It's really a critical issue because of the Eurosceptic parties that are going to always there. There are always German Donald Trumps, French Donald Trumps, Italian Donald Trumps, Kyrgyz, Belgian Donald Trumps, waiting to exploit these issues. So, so my question to you was, I think we covered this already in class, that the human trafficking crisis with Belarus will result in the European Union acquiring more de facto federal sovereign power over the EU member states. So in responding to these migrants coming in from Belarus, and of course, now it's starting to get media attention. And I got to make sure I forget. I almost forgot. Let's do the attendance. Almost forgot about the attendance. So do screen share. And add smart attendance. And your smart attendance number is 514. 514 is your smart attendance number. So let me put that in the chat, 514. Okay, and so let me also open up the another report I have regarding the events going on in Belarus. People are dying now in Belarus from cold, from the winter cold, right? So there's a report here. Make sure you can see that. I got to make sure you screen sharing here, screen share. And so here, this report has pictures. So I thought, kind of nice to always have some pictures here. Yeah, it says here a 19-year-old person died in late October from freezing in a river trying to cross the border into Poland. And they had a funeral for this Syrian, I think a Syrian man, young man, 19 years old, died. So that man, I guess he's a Muslim. And people might not realize this, but there actually is a Muslim minority in Poland from the Tartars, the Tatari, that part of Genghis Khan's horde that conquered Asia and moved into Europe. Part of that horde, Genghis Khan's horde, settled in, were still present in Poland. It says as the funeral proceeded in Bohoniki, so there are Muslims there, and there's a Muslim mosque with an imam, and they had a funeral for this dead Syrian boy at the mosque at this town in Bohoniki, because there actually is an imam there. So the European Union is putting more sanctions on the government of on Alexander Lukashenko, the Belarus leader, who's already been sanctioned for fraud and claiming a sweeping victory in August and for subsequent harsh suppression of dissent. So the European Union already put sanctions on Lukashenko for stealing the election, for fraudulent elections to stay in power. Now he's been in power since 1994, and so in response to those sanctions, he's trying to rebuke or respond to the European Union by making a migration crisis on the border with Poland. And it says here, so again, when we think about, we try to imagine what does a quantum leap of European integration look like? What does that mean? It doesn't mean only, I think, just, what are we going to do with these migrants? How do we respond to migration? How do we respond as the European Union to migrant flows coming from Asia and Africa, particularly in terms of dealing with the political sources and causes of those migration flows, right? That, like, how are we dealing with the government officials that are somehow responsible for the policies that are making these economic or contributing to these economic humanitarian disasters that cause the people to move? And if that policy area, I can imagine that kind of question being escalated to the European Commission responsibility. That this, of course, each of the member states would continue to have their own migration policies, but in terms of the European Union acting to shape the political behavior of Lukashenko or the Taliban or the government of Syria, where there's a civil war still going on since 2014, that's killed hundreds of thousands of people, or dealing with Lebanon and its economic disaster, that the European Union, through the European Commission, would get more and more responsibility. And the European Commission would get the responsibility for the reasons I discussed earlier, that these issue areas are falling under the European Commission's toolbox, the European Commission's ability to use economic trade incentives and economic aid incentives in negotiating with other countries. They've always had that power. They've had that power since the beginning of the European Community back in the 1950s, that the European Commission is supposed to represent the European Economic Community in international trade negotiations. So the European Union has been moving these justice and home affairs policies, because that's the topic for this week. They've been moving these justice and home affairs policies to the ordinary legislative procedure for the European Union to make law, which means, again, remember, the European Commission proposes, the European Parliament and the Council of Ministers then amend, vote, and then vote on that proposal from the European Commission, and it has to pass by majority vote, not by unanimous agreement, by majority, qualified majority vote in the Council of Ministers, a majority approval in the European Parliament. And so the European Commission already has the institutional infrastructure institutional framework for acting quickly in regards to use of economic aid and trade tools to incentivize governments to change their policies, to stop doing what's causing or contributing to these migrant crises. So let me go ahead and ask you to vote on this, and let me go back to the original one that I had opened up there, and so that I want you to vote on that first before we talk about the next one here. So my question to you is that the European trafficking crisis with Belarus will ultimately result in the European Union acquiring more de facto federal sovereign power over the EU member states. And so let me go to breakout rooms, and I didn't bring any coin. Oh, actually, I did bring some coins with me, but I put them in my backpack. So let me get a coin so I can flip a coin and ask you to, if I can get the coin, ask you to vote. Not vote, but break up in breakout rooms and see if you respond, how you respond to this question. So let me stop share and go back to the participants. And well, I think I'll just have you in one breakout room. And so please join the group. Maria, Kang Tong-un, and Owen Tek, please join the group. Marie, Kang Tong-un, and Owen Tek, please join the group. And Kang Tong-un, okay. And then let me see who's going to speak for the group. So let me flip a coin here. Heads, it's Maria, and it is tails. So heads, it's the second person, and it's heads. So the person that's going to speak is Kang Tong-un. Kang Tong-un, you're going to speak for the group. Where does the group fit? Where do you place the group on this scale of whether or not you think the current migration crisis, the latest migration crisis in the European Union, is going to cause the European Union to get even more power over the member states? And I should write a statement as well. And, you know, they used to give us free paper to write on here in these hotels, but there's no paper to write on. So I got to use this scrap paper to write my statement. So I have to flip a coin as well and decide where I am. And heads, I'm 1, 2, or 3. And it's tails. Heads, I'm 4. And I'm 5. So I strongly disagree with this statement. And I got to explain why. Why do I strongly disagree? Okay, 5. Because Okay. Okay, yeah. I mean, one of the nice reasons why I like doing these exercises, because sometimes it forces me to sober up in terms of my overly romantic, enthusiastic views, because I had to flip a coin. I had to write strongly disagree. And when I had to make myself write strongly disagree, I sort of went, oh my gosh, this is probably true. In terms of what's going to happen here in the future. So, I mean, we always think about the future. We have to think about scenarios, cause and effect, pointing into the future. So what do you think is going to be the domestic political situation or the domestic political consequences in Poland, for example, as a result of this current migrant crisis with Belarus? What's going to happen in terms of the next elections in Poland? And when I think about that, oh, but before I go on, let me hear what you have to say. And so let me go back to the breakout rooms and close the breakout rooms. So you have 60 seconds. I should have closed this earlier. Okay. All right. Kang Tong-un. Kang Tong-un, where did the group place itself on this scale, on this Likert scale? Kang Tong-un?
Okay. I'm not sure because but I think it will depends on how EU solve the problem about this human trafficking crisis. Yeah, so if they are fix the problem peacefully, the EU would acquiring more de facto federal sovereign power, I think.
Okay. I mean, that's a good point. That's a good point. That how they solve this crisis will determine whether or not they get the European Union gets more de facto federal power, like the United States federal government over the American states. That the European Union will never, it's not officially a federal government, but becoming more and more responsible for making, for example, immigration policy for the entire European Union. And you see that in the United States, right? That the federal government has responsibility for setting immigration policy in the United States. Sometimes the states, the American states like Texas, they don't like it and they try to sue the US government. And sometimes they engage in political theater. The state of Texas, the Republican governor and the Republican party dominated legislature of the state of Texas passed laws that contradict US federal government immigration policy. And then the US federal government sues them. And it's all basically trying to win elections, right? It's all about appealing to American nationalism, American xenophobia. But still, the US federal government sets immigration policy. And so this crisis, you're saying, will somehow be resolved, will be addressed. Its question is, how will it be addressed? And you could well see a situation whereby to address it most effectively, the European Union member states will once again, pull their resources to have more power collectively, acting collectively to pressure Lukashenko, to pressure Putin, to pressure whomever. More so than Warsaw could do on its own by far. I mean, how's Warsaw going to pressure? I mean, Warsaw it can try, but Poland doesn't have nearly any resources to punish Russia or incentivize Russia. But if the European Union acts as a whole, and it appears to be making an impact, because there's something going on now, because Lukashenko apparently is trying to back down in the latest news report from today or yesterday. Because, you know, you have 27 member states all agreeing to work together that they can do some serious damage, even to a country like Belarus, which has, you know, most of its economic commitments to Russia, but still, you know, it's like everybody else in the former Soviet Union. So many of the rich people in the former Soviet Union, they've got ties and connections to US, to Britain, to Canada, to Australia, not to mention the European Union member states. You know, in Italy and Greece. I mean, there's all sorts of Russian money in Greece and in Cyprus. Russian money loves Greek and Cypriot banks. So, I mean, if the European Union moves on this and concludes that Putin is supporting Lukashenko and causing this trouble, then that makes a difference. And the result could well be that we see that de facto the European Union acquires more and more authority to act quickly and directly and on the power of majority votes and power given to it to implement incentives as represented by Borrell, the member, the High Representative of the Common Foreign and Security Policy. He's the de facto foreign minister of the European Union now, and he's also vice chairman of the vice president of the European Commission. So the High Representative of the Common Foreign and Security Policy, this man named Josep Borrell, he's also the vice president of the Commission. He also attends all of the meetings of the European Council. When the heads of government and state meet, when they call the European Council, when the president of France, the prime minister of Germany, the prime minister of Italy, when all of they meet in the European Council, Josep Borrell, as the high representative of the Common Foreign Security Policy, is sitting in those meetings. So I could well see how, again, the European Commission will get more power and authority out of this. Not necessarily by forcing Poland, by making Poland take the refugees. They might make or incentivize the Belarusians that you better do something with these refugees, like give them a place to stay in Belarus and work in Belarus, or give them jobs. Or if you don't, because like I mentioned, there's so many of these rich former Soviet leaders in the former Soviet Union who've got ties and connections and families studying and working throughout the world. And if you put sanctions on those people, on those ministers, those rich industrialists, they don't like having their lifestyle impacted like that, particularly when they have, so many Russian billionaires. They've got property, lots of property in capitals around the world, including in Athens, but like in London. And if you put sanctions on them, then they're going to be very unhappy about it. I'm not necessarily saying that the European Union is going to, put economic sanctions on Belarus and make those people, the working class people in Belarus, suffer even more than they already are. But they can target these individuals, right? Which is what they seem to be doing. They're putting sanctions on particular individuals in the police, in the governments, and threatening them that way. But I had to write strongly disagree. So this is what I wrote for strongly disagree. And tell me what you think. I strongly disagree because the member states are going to become even more nationalistic. They're going to become even more nationalistic. Public opinion will become even more nationalistic in Poland and in Hungary and in other countries as yet another group of non-white refugees coming from Asia and Africa, tries to push its way into the European Union. For example, the current government in Poland, the Law and Justice Party under Jarosław Kaczynski, the leader of the Law and Justice Party that controls the Polish government, the far-right party that the European Commission is threatening to sanction unless it stops trying to undermine the judiciary in Poland, that the European Union claims must remain autonomous, and that the Law and Justice Party wants to take control over the court system in Poland. For example, the Law and Justice Party in Poland is going to become more popular as a result of how it's dealing with this crisis, with its harsh and dangerous policies towards keeping these migrants out of Poland. I mean, it was on the news this morning that the Polish police, they sent a water cannon, you know, those water tanks that police bring out to spray water on protesters. They must use them in Korea. I'm sure they, use them elsewhere. They're using them against these refugees. The Polish police, they brought one of these water cannons, and this is in wintertime temperatures. You spray water on somebody, you're going to kill them. They're going to die. They're going to freeze to death. Right. So, for example, the Law and Justice Party in Poland is going to become more popular with its harsh and dangerous policies towards keeping the migrants out of Poland. You know, they're going to, I expect that the current Law and Justice Party government will point to the European Union supporting party, the party in Poland supports the European Union more enthusiastically, to claim that party led by Donald Tusk would have let those refugees in. So Donald Tusk used to be the president of the European Council, not the European Commission, the European Council. And he was before the current man became president. I think, what was his name? I have to, Boris? I have to check. But, he was president of the European Council. He was the former prime minister of Poland on the Civic Platform Party, the party that's most enthusiastically pro-European Union. Then he lost the election in 2015. And when he lost that election to be replaced by Law and Justice, he was hired by the European Union to become president of the European Council. Then he quit, and now he's going back. He's back in Poland trying to be engaged in Polish politics and get Polish people to support him and his party because they're more pro-European. But you know, this Law and Justice Party among many Poles is going to become, I think, a lot more popular than it already is, because Kaczynski and Law and Justice took this nasty, unpleasant act, like, you know, Donald Trump did in the United States, nasty, unpleasant policies to keep those people out of Poland. And, you know, and they're going to become even more popular. And I bet you he's going to win the next election. I don't know when the next elections are. They're not for some time. And he's going to claim that Yaroslaw Kaczynski and the Law and Justice Party are going to claim that Donald Tusk, he would have let those people in because that's what the European Union, you know, wanted us to do, to allow those refugees to claim asylum and stay in Poland until their asylum claims were processed, like they're doing in Greece, and they'd be here for a year. And I kept him out, and he's going to get support for that. I would, you know, I mean, I know the next elections are sometime off in the future, but I mean, this is going to appeal to a lot of Polish people. So the Law and Justice Party is not, I don't think, is going anywhere. Despite what Donald Tusk wants to do, despite the European Commission threatening the European Poland with sanctions. I mean, maybe the European Commission won't, they're not going to, I don't think they would politically dare try to punish Poland for not allowing those refugees into Poland to claim asylum. That's even if Poland should, for humanitarian and universal human rights and legal obligations under the United Nations Refugee Asylum Treaty of 1951, they're still not going to do it because, for all the reasons we're talking about here, it's too politically sensitive. And the European Commission is very politically astute, is very politically attentive. So they're not, if they punish the Law and Justice Party, they're not going to include this refugee crisis for any explanations of why they're putting sanctions on Poland. They wouldn't dare, because it would be political. Law and Justice Party would love them to do that. So that's probably what's going to happen. The European Commission is going to put sanctions and use incentives against Belarus and other countries to take care of those refugees. First, stop them from coming to Belarus on Turkish Air and Belarus Airlines, flying into Belarus from these countries, from Turkey, from Iran, from Afghanistan. Stop them from coming in, Iraq. And then the ones that are already there, they're going to make Lukashenko take care of those refugees. like give them a place to live, give them jobs, process their, something like that. I mean, there's only like a few thousand of them. There's not that many yet. We're not talking, 50,000 or 10,000. We're talking, I think, 2,000 or 3,000 refugees. But, it's highly symbolic, highly emotional issue because of nationalism, right? So, okay, so let me ask you then to vote on that, because I don't think I asked you to vote on that last time. So, let me share the screen. So please vote. And 3 of you already did. I think you already voted. You finished. Okay, hooray. All right. So you are neutral, cannot decide, and 4 disagree. So, I mean, I can see both things happening, basically. That the European Commission gets more and more authority and power to negotiate with other countries like Belarus, Russia, whomever, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, regarding migration policy, while at the same time, you see that the nationalist figures in Poland and other countries are going to try to exploit this issue and appeal to nationalism and not take those refugees in. They're not going to take them in. Right. I just and they're going to be politically rewarded the next elections for that. So we'll see. I have to check to see when the next elections are for the Polish parliament, but I don't think they're for some time. Okay, and then we have another exercise I wanted to, and I got to make sure, I got to remember we do the debate. I didn't have a chance to go through your paragraphs because I've been here. So, but I'll look at them later. So, let's see, that's not what I want. There's another one I want here. And okay, yeah, that one I already opened up. So, yeah, so here's a discussion of the sanctions. The new sanctions, I think you can see that, right? Make sure you can see that. It says here, the new sanctions approved by the European governments Monday would target, so they were approved by European governments. So I don't know if that meant that all of the member states or by majority vote of the Council of Ministers of the European Union. But it says the new sanctions approved by European governments Monday would target individuals and entities organizing or contributing to activities by the Lukashenko regime that facilitate illegal crossing of the European Union's external borders, according to the European Commission, the bloc's executive bureaucracy. So a list of those to be hit by by asset freezes and travel bans under the new sanctions is expected to be finalized in coming days. Likely be targeted are more than 24 Belarusian officials, a Syrian airline, Cham Wings, for having transported migrants to Belarus, the Hotel Minsk in the Belarus capital for housing migrants, and possibly Minsk airport, according to EU officials. And, then you see here, Josep Borrell Fontelles speaks. Today's decision reflects the determination by the European Union to stand up to the instrumentalization of migrants for political purposes, said the EU foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell Fontelles. We are pushing back on this inhuman and illegal practice. The European Union is calling this Lukashenko's efforts a hybrid attack, saying that he has encouraged migrants to fly into Cyprus from countries like Syria and Iraq with the express purpose of sending them on to the European Union in retaliation for earlier sanctions. Yeah, I mean, and that's significant. This term hybrid attack, this term first became popular and notable back in 2014, 2015, when Russia, immediately after the pro-Russian government in Ukraine was overthrown, Yanukovych government, President Yanukovych government was overthrown through protests that were encouraged and supported publicly by the European Union and the United States in Kiev. The government collapsed after killing 80 or 90 protesters, shooting them down in the streets. And this happened because these protests happened because President Yanukovych of Ukraine had promised in the campaign to win the election that made him president, which was a free and fair election, according to the European Union, that he would agree to a free trade agreement with the European Union, an FTA with the European Union. And as they began to negotiate that FTA with the European Union, people were skeptical. Is he really going to negotiate this FTA with the European Union? I mean, we know Russia doesn't want Ukraine to have an FTA with the European Union. We know that Ukrainian economy is still very much dependent upon Russian economy for infrastructure and supplies because of the legacy of the old Soviet Union. And Yanukovych said, I'm going to make an agreement. We're going to make an agreement. We're going to make an agreement. And then at the last minute, he did what everybody suspected he was going to do. He decided he wasn't going to sign an FTA, a free trade agreement with the European Union. And he was put under a lot of pressure, of course, by Russia, by the Russian government, putting sanctions on Ukraine, pressuring Ukraine, because Ukrainian manufacturing economy in particular, not to mention its oil and gas supplies, depend upon Russia. And then he said, no, I'm not going to sign FTA with the European Union. And that triggered all these protests, particularly led by Ukrainian nationalists. And these protests led to, the secret police killing at least 80 people in demonstrations in Kiev. And then he fled the country and he's hiding somewhere in Russia now. And at that point, when that happened, Russia began what was called a hybrid attack on Ukraine, that they annexed Crimea Peninsula, part of Ukrainian territory, claiming that and denying that they were involved in that. That they sent Russian military personnel in unmarked uniforms in a kind of covert, unofficial capacity to seize control over Crimea. Crimea is a peninsula. Maybe I can show it to you here. Open up Wikipedia here. Crimea is a peninsula in Ukraine that is very important for Ukrainian. Well, this is Ukraine. This is Crimea. This little. Make sure you can see that. So this is Ukraine. This is Crimea, and for Russians, because of Crimea is to Russia what Dok Island is to South Koreans in terms of its emotional significance. Only in 1957 did the government in Moscow, the communist government in Moscow under Khrushchev gave Ukraine control over Crimea, sort of as a payoff or compensation for the horrible policies of Stalin against the people of Ukraine, where millions of them died of the what they call it, Holodomor, the famine. That it was evidently, they claim, Ukrainian nationalists claim, it was purposely done by Stalin to kill all the rich peasants who in this area, because this was the capital, the center of the Russia's wheat and agricultural area of the old Soviet Union, the old Russian Empire. And so this is, Putin ordered what they called little green men who are part of the Russian military, but were not wearing uniforms with insignia, with decals. No, they were camouflaged, and then seized control of this area of Crimea when Crimea moved to negotiate this FTA with the European Union. And then they also encouraged these Russian-speaking areas to rise up against the central government control here in Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine. And that's where we first heard the term hybrid attack. And the reason I mention that is because now you see that same term being mentioned here, a hybrid attack, which, here I am at this conference where we're talking about the former Soviet Union, Russia, Poland, Ukraine, and to show you again how the European Union is still using and still understanding itself within the framework of this view that somehow the Soviet Union, Moscow, more particularly Moscow, Russia, Moscow is an adversary, an enemy, an adversary of the European Union and as part of NATO and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That this is a hybrid attack that somehow, and this involves somehow Russia behind the scenes, not officially. Lukashenko would never have done this unless Vladimir Putin was going to support him. this little country, I think it was only like 11 million people live in Belarus, right? 11 million people. It's not a lot of people. It's a country that was created by Stalin and Lenin in the 1920s to separate that population from Poland, because there's a lot of Polish shared ethnic identity amongst those people. It was a country that was aiming to reduce. It was created by Lenin and Stalin, aiming to reduce Poland's influence in that area. But again, you see this term that we've seen this before. Europe, we met the challenge. We've dealing with this threat from Moscow, and now Moscow again is doing something behind the scenes, unofficially, in a covert, unofficial way. Lukashenko is the front man for Russia trying to destroy the European Union, and we must not allow our common adversary to destroy the European Union that began during the Cold War, that began with our American friends and supporting us under the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It says here, the new sanctions will have to undergo, see this here as well. The new sanctions will have to undergo legal vetting, means approval, by the European Commission before being implemented with and coordinated with Britain, Canada, United States, which could take several weeks. So they openly mention, they openly say that the European Commission is doing this with the close cooperation of Britain, the former European Union member, Canada, and the United States. And I just came from a panel, that started at 5 o'clock, and I left early to come to class today, and there was a panel earlier this afternoon, and I asked the panelists. They were talking about Abkhazia, Nagorno-Karabakh, South Ossetia, Transnistria. Maybe Marie knows something about these areas because she has family ties to the former Soviet Union. But these are little states that seceded from Moldova and Georgia because of the fear that Moldova and Georgia, and the anxiety that Moldova and Georgia and Ukraine were going to join NATO and the European Union. So Russia encouraged or supported or instigated uprisings in Abkhazia, South Ossetia, and Georgia, in Transnistria and in Moldova, and Nagorno-Karabakh is a special case. But that because I asked the panelists making the presentation, these people are doing research in Transnistria and Nagorno-Karabakh. They were interviewing people in Abkhazia, South Ossetia. How do those people who lead these secessionist movements, what is their understanding of the relationship of European Union and NATO? European Union and NATO, and they said what we confirm what we know. Those people who are leading those new unrecognized states. Remember, I think the only countries that recognize South Ossetia and Abkhazia are Venezuela, Nicaragua, and I can't think of another one. I mean, and Russia, of course, as well, but nobody else. But they said in those interviews that all those people who lead those new independent de facto states that want recognition, they view the European Union and NATO as two sides of the same coin. They don't separate NATO and the European Union. And if you don't separate NATO and the European Union, you don't separate the European Union from the United States. The United States and the European Union are pretty much, the European Union is an organization to facilitate the cooperation, coordination, collaboration of America's allies to support American hegemony. And that's true not just in Abkhazia, it's true in Kosovo. It's true in, and so is that a good thing? If the European Union is a peace strategy, is that really something that's desirable? Because the European Union says we're all about peace. Well, I mean, Russia's part of Europe. And if Russia sees a terrible threat, or if it sees, in response to Ukraine signing a free trade agreement with the European Union, Russia responded by triggering a war that's killed thousands of people and caused 1 million refugees to move. And last time I heard, at least 10,000. I don't know how many people have died in those uprisings in the eastern part, in this part of Ukraine, right? I mean, last time I checked, you know, there's still people were fighting and dying here in this area here, like 1 soldier a week being killed. The European Union is supposed to be about peace. Well, Russia evidently has a problem with the European Union, and maybe it has a problem because Russia's bad. Maybe Russia wants to dominate these peoples, and not just these peoples, but also maybe these peoples that were part of the part of Eastern Europe under communism, and Russia resents that it's not able to dominate and control these countries the way they used to, and they want to rebuild their de facto empire the way America, you know, dominates much of Latin America and the Caribbean islands or whatever. But I mean, if is that a good thing? If the European Union and the United States are inseparable, what does that say about the long-term longevity? What about, you know, for example, the Americans are putting these sanctions on Afghanistan. They are not wanting, they're slow to negotiate to remove the economic sanctions on Afghanistan that the Americans put on, and therefore all of its allies put on Afghanistan once the Taliban took power. So there's 40 million people that live here. And when the Taliban took power in August, all of the money of this government that was on these bank accounts in Europe and United States that you need to have in order to engage in international trade and business was frozen. So the Taliban government can't access that money, even as this humanitarian disaster is unfolding. And you know, people are talking about, you know, is the European Union going to make its banks remove the sanctions off Afghanistan so that the economy can continue to work in Afghanistan, so these people have less pressure to leave? And will they do that if the Americans resist? If the Americans say, no, Taliban is not fighting against terrorism. They're not treating protecting human rights sufficiently. So we refuse to cooperate with the Taliban significantly until the Taliban changes its policies in a way that we like. And any European or American company that uses dollars cannot do business in the US if they do business in Afghanistan, which means no company will do business with Afghanistan because they don't want to make an enemy of the United States. And the United States justification is that, you know, if you're going to use dollars and you're going to use the American banks to process your international business, you cannot support terrorists. And Taliban is a terrorist organization, as according to the United States. So is the European Union going to stand up to the Americans? Do they have the capacity to risk that crisis? We have to get the economy of Afghanistan moving again. So we're not going to implement the sanctions, and and what's Joe Biden going to do of the United States? So these are the kind of questions that all come to mind right now when you read reports like this, that you know, the European Union is coordinating with the United States on putting sanctions on Lukashenko and Belarus because it's a hybrid attack. And it goes on here. You know, Lukashenko said he might close off the gas pipelines coming from Russia through Belarus to supply Western Europe with gas. And Putin said, no, Lukashenko should not have said that, and that was bad for Lukashenko to threaten. He can't cut off Russian gas supplies. And Lukashenko was mistaken in speaking in anger, Putin said, while underlining that Russia would strictly respect its gas contracts with Europe. A key message as he tries to get final approval to use the controversial Nord 2 gas pipeline that goes directly to Germany and thus bypasses Belarus, Poland, Ukraine. So that's that gas pipeline that goes under the ocean, on the ocean bed, that is going to go around Poland, Belarus to directly supply Russian gas, natural gas, to Germany. And it goes on, you know, the humanitarian situation is getting worse in Belarus. Another person died oh, it's not died. Somebody's hundreds of people, freezing. And it goes on, just again, discussing the suffering of the people there. And there you see some pictures. Sputnik, that's Cyrillic alphabet. Sputnik means satellite, right? Gostin's Sputnik Hotel. That's the Sputnik Hotel, I guess, in Belarus, right? In there you see that Syrian boy who died freezing, being buried in a Bohoniki, where there's a mosque. And, coming across these frozen people, they're freezing to death on the border. This is the capital of Minsk, Belarus. And you see that here the Polish police are checking to make sure nobody sneaks through on the road. Again, migrants stranded in the city of Belarus, in this downtown area. Another hotel in Belarus. Yeah, this is not Minsk, Poland, Minsk, Belarus. That's a misprint they made. Belarus. Another casualty, somebody dying, freezing to death. More migrants in Belarus. Patrol vehicles. There are aid workers there. I mean, they're mostly young people, young Polish people who are, trying to help these migrants, so they don't just like die, just die and freeze to death. Just like there are, NGOs in Greece and in Italy and other countries that are trying to help migrants trying to get into the European Union, who are on boats, trying to cross from Turkey or Libya to get to Italian or Greek territory. And, thousands have died. I mean, I think before the pandemic, or maybe 3 years ago, the estimate was that up to 20,000 people drowned, trying to cross the Mediterranean Ocean to get to Europe since 1991. So 20,000 people drowned. And so there are these non-governmental organizations trying to help these people. And so you see, there's some Poles trying to help these people because, these people are desperate, right? They sold everything that they have. They have nothing to try to get a plane ticket to go to Minsk and then hopefully try to cross the border to get into the European Union. And that's, after the war in Iraq and Syria, and Afghanistan, that the Americans have played an important role in. The European Union didn't lead those wars, but the Americans did. And then the European Union, acquiesced to them. So is the European Union again going to acquiesce to America's policies, producing another big movement of migrants, looming movement of migrants from Afghanistan? So what the European Union, they will try to do probably is give money to Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan to take the refugees from Afghanistan and feed them. But these people don't want to just stay in a refugee camp in Kazakhstan. They want to, go somewhere where they can get a job and make a life. Right? They're not going to want to stay in a refugee camp, even if they're fed and housed in Kazakhstan. They want to go somewhere or Uzbekistan. They want to go somewhere where they can make a life for themselves and get a job. Because these people are typically, if they're refugees, they're not supposed to work because that's supposed to threaten the jobs of people that are citizens of those countries. So they can work in Turkey. Turkey takes in millions of refugees, and the European Union has paid Turkey, given subsidies to Turkey to take in those refugees from Syria, and let them stay and work. So they're probably going to have to do something similar with regard to the countries surrounding Afghanistan. But what are you going to do about Iran? I mean, the Americans have put sanctions on Iran. They don't want any company doing business with Iran because they claim Iran supports terrorism. And Iran is, what's the European Union going to do about American policy towards Iran? Or Pakistan, but particularly Iran? Is the European Union again going to just acquiesce to America's policies that help create these refugee crises in the first place by destroying Iraq and destroying Libya and encouraging and intervening in the war in Syria? When is the European Union going to say no to the United States? I don't. So my question to you is, please respond to the following statement. The European Union represents American hegemony in Europe. Do you strongly agree, neutral, cannot decide, disagree, or strongly disagree? So let me go back to the breakout rooms. And so I'll open all rooms. And so you're back in your room. So Kang Tong-un spoke last time. And so heads, it's Marie. Please join the group. Marie, heads, it's own tech. Is in the third person. So heads, it's Marie. And it is Marie. Marie will speak. So Marie, Kang Tong-un, own tech, please join, go back into your group. Marie, own tech, Marie. Marie, where is Marie? Okay, own tech, you'll speak for the group since we don't know where Marie is. So you go ahead and tell me, decide with Kang Tong-un where you fit on this scale as to whether or not how you respond to the statement that the European Union represents American hegemony in Europe. Is that you strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree? So let me flip a coin to decide what I am. Heads, I'm 1, 2, or 3. And I'm heads. Heads, I'm a 1. And I'm 1. I strongly agree. Okay. Okay, own tech. What did your group place itself on this scale? Where did it place itself? Own tech? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
The European Union is both an organization for European integration and organization for Europe's joint response to non-European countries. It can be said that United States hegemony has a great impact on the European Union's response, but basically the European Union is an organization to respond to the action of other countries.
Okay. Yeah, all right. I see what you're saying. Basically, they respond to other countries, but then they coordinate with their allies. And their allies include Australia, Canada, Britain. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having allies. The question is, would the European Union ever do something that seriously challenges American priorities? And there is some, there is some interest in that regard. I did mention in previous class this Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, right? And so, and the European Union, particularly the Germans, are continuing to move forward with this Nord 2 gas pipeline, even though Trump and the Biden administration opposed it, because it's a gas pipeline. I think I can, everything's on Wikipedia. So let me see if I can find it on Wikipedia here. Nord Stream 2. I showed you this in a previous class. And the reason why it's controversial is because the gas pipeline will connect Germany and Russia to supply gas to the European Union without going through Belarus, without going through Ukraine. And the reason why that is important is because if it has to go through Belarus and Poland, or Ukraine and Poland, because this is Ukraine down here, then Poland and Belarus and Ukraine can use that gas pipeline to put pressure on Russia, to leverage Russia if Russia acts in a way that Poland doesn't like, or Belarus or Ukraine doesn't like, that Poland in particular can threaten to shut down that gas pipeline and make Russia stop doing something or influence Russian behavior. Now this gas pipeline will go all the way under the ocean, go around all these other European Union member states, go around Poland and connect directly with Germany. And Trump didn't like it, and then Biden didn't like it, and it's 95% finished. The pipeline has been built and it's ready to be completed and start delivering gas to Germany. And apparently the Biden administration is acquiescing to the Europeans, refusing their demands to stop working on this Nord Stream gas pipeline. Although there is opposition in Congress, there's people in Congress, US Congress, like Ted Cruz of Texas, the Senator Ted Cruz from Texas. He's slowing down legislation. He's slowing down US Senate consideration of appointments, not approval of appointments by the Biden administration to work in the US State Department is a way by which to try to pressure the Biden administration to stop supporting Nord Stream 2, but it appears to be going forward. So, that's not insignificant. That's not a minor issue. Here you see the European Union opposing the Americans, demanding that the European Union not become more dependent upon Russian gas. They're doing it anyway. But that's one thing. And the European Union already gets most of its oil and gas from Russia. The European Union engages in $450 billion worth of trade with Russia, mostly in the form of buying from Russia oil and gas that go through pipelines that go through Ukraine and go through Belarus to Western Europe that were built back in the 1970s and 80s under Carter and Reagan. And Carter and Reagan didn't like them at that time as well, but the Europeans went ahead and built those pipelines with the old Soviet Union to supply oil and gas to Europe. So there's precedent, right? That the Europeans were doing this 50, 60 years ago. and they're going to continue to get oil and gas from Russia. But to stand up to the United States with regard to Afghanistan and Iran, particularly Iran, because Iran is the most powerful threat, the most powerful source of challenge to Israel. I mean, Iran is a big country of 80 million people. It's a nation state. Those people are proud. They're nationalistic. They're just as smart as anybody else. And for European Union to really deal with this refugee crisis, it needs to have better relations with Iran. But the United States won't let any company do business with Iran. So we'll have a test. I wrote, I strongly agree. The European Union represents American hegemony in Europe because in the middle of all of the escalating crises around the world that we see happening now, the European Union will cooperate even more closely with the United States, not less. You'll cooperate even more closely with the Biden administration. And you see it happening in terms of European Union moving towards, allying with the United States against China, talking about an international rules-based order, with the French and the British becoming more actively involved in the Indo-Pacific area, with the French sending ships and the British sending an aircraft carrier. There's at least more talk about supporting Taiwan. The major threat to the European Union, United States alliance is not the EU opposing the US. It is rather the US domestic politics producing again a leader like Donald Trump as president that rejects cooperation with Europe. If somebody like Donald Trump becomes president again in the United States, which is quite conceivable, and again raises hostility and conflict with the European Union might have no choice. For example, if under a Mike Pompeo administration, if Mike Pompeo becomes president and he bombs Iran, or Ron DeSantis of Florida, governor, another Trumpian type politician, becomes president of the United States. All these people, if they're going to run for president, if Trump doesn't, and if they bomb Iran, what is the European Union going to do? Say, oh yeah, we accept that, because there's a lot of pressure in the U.S. government to attack Iran. And so that's, I think, more of a likely scenario, that the European Union and the United States separate because the United States changes, not the European Union. And the European Union is left with no choice in its view that it's got to become truly autonomous in relationship to the United States if the United States behaves recklessly beyond what it's already done in destroying Iraq, failing in Afghanistan, destroying Libya. Look what the United States has done. And the country, Europe is right on the front line. They're the one that get all the refugees, not the United States. Pretty sad, Okay, so we should go to our debate. And like I said, I didn't have a chance to look at your paragraphs yet because I've been at this conference. So if we go back to the debate topic, and the debate topic is, this is the debate topic, and I've got to edit this and write who won the debate. I forgot to put that in there. I thought I did. So let me allow you to choose who's going to be pro and who's going to be con on the debate topic. And so here's the debate topic. And to South Koreans, developed industrialized countries like the European Union member states, South Korea, US, Canada, Japan need large-scale immigration to sustain their economies into the future. South Korea is going to have negative population growth pretty quickly. It's becoming smaller and smaller because people are not having enough babies in South Korea. Same is true in Japan. I mean, the population in Italy and Germany would already be getting smaller were it not for immigration. The only reason why the population has not gotten smaller in Italy or Germany is because of migration. So that's the debate topic. To South Koreans, developed industrialized countries like the European Union member states, South Korea, US, Canada, Japan need large-scale immigration to sustain their economies into the future. So let me let you choose which side you're on. So let me form 2 breakout rooms and let you choose which one to join. And so room 1 is pro, and room 2 is con. So on the basis of your paragraphs, please join one of those 2 groups. Please do it now. And Kang Tong-un, are you going to join one?
Oh yeah.
Which are you, pro or con?
Um.
Con, okay, let me assign you to con then. And since you are by yourself, I'll work with you, and Marie and Owen Tuck will work for pro. So, all right, so I'm going to join con, and so pro, you're not going to hear me for a while as I talk with Kang Tong-un. So to prepare our statement, okay? So both of you can prepare to speak, and since there's a small number of people in a class, and so who's going to speak first? Heads, it's Marie. Tails, it's Owen Tech. So it is Owen Tech will speak first, and then Marie second. Okay. Okay, Kang Tong-un, I am with you. Why did you write con?
I don't think the immigration is not the only one solution about economic problem, because now until now many people doesn't want to receive the immigration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the public opinion. There are many various public opinion in the country, so I don't think the only immigration is not the only one solution.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that technology will be developing more and more, and like with artificial intelligence and the development of robotics, that there will be more and more technology solutions?
Yeah.
So and I guess outsourcing, to more and more of the global economy, so that I mean, the claim made about immigration is that you need, as this population gets old, you need to take care of these people, and that means they need assisted living, and they need to be put in. They need people to take care of them because they get old and they can't take care of themselves. And again, it's a difficult job, to take care of an old person who cannot go to the bathroom and cannot clean themselves after using the toilet. I mean, typically, it's, again, Koreans don't want to do it. Americans don't want to do it. German. So immigrants do it. And, in the United States, you go to one of these homes, and, there's so many people that look like they're not white people working in that kind of work because it's not paid very well, even though it's very important. But you think that with the development of technology, that that there'll be ways, because I mean, that's what Angela Merkel said when she brought in over 1 million. We need these people anyway. We need them in our economy because, again, for the reasons I mentioned, difficult, dirty, and dangerous work. And dirty means, including taking care of people, not just construction work, but like, taking care of people who can't take care of themselves. You need them, not just for old people, for young people. If women are going to work, they need daycare for their children. So who's going to watch the children? So you need to have daycare centers. And again, that kind of work it's not really highly paid, but it's really important. And if you raise the wages for those people, the costs of providing healthcare and daycare for children are going to go up and up and up. And so it's the kind of work you don't need to know you don't need to know the native language really well to take care of people, baby. I guess I that's the argument. But so how are you going to respond when somebody says that?
Yeah, I agree with you, but
Because that's what Pro is probably going to argue.
yeah,
That people getting older and women wanting to work, you need daycare and healthcare, and you need immigrants to do it because Americans will, well, anyway. So you might claim it. Well, there'll be a balance because of technological development. I just don't know, what kind of technology you're going to develop to take care of old people. Or to take care of babies at a nursery. You still need somebody to be there to watch. And, so, okay. So let's go then to the.
yeah, I'm gonna keep thinking.
Okay, Own Tech, you'll speak first for Pro. So Own Tech.
Yeah.
Why do you think immigration is necessary for the future well-being of the economies of South Korea, Japan, European Union, United States?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Some countries in the United States, Japan, and Europe, which we call developed countries, have already reached in aging society where stagnation and decline appear at the stage of population growth. As a countermeasure against this, population inflow from abroad is suggested as an alternative to sustainable economic growth and population maintenance along with low birth rates. In particular, in the case of Korea, rural areas, some local cities and some industries in those areas have become poorly operated without foreign workers from Southeast Asia and China. Although some of the foreign workers in such industries are known to be illegal residents, the reality of Korea is that without them, they cannot respond because there are no workers. If Korea fails to find a way to raise the birth rate, Korea is on the verge of extinction. And in order to overcome it, it will have to consider the immigration of larger number of foreign workers now.
How would you respond to someone who says that Well, the solution is not bringing in more Filipinos and Azeris and Turks and Turkmen to work in Korea. It's rather to reunify with North Korea, because if you reunify with North Korea, you have all of the labor you need. And well, there will not be any need for immigration, because South Korea and North Korea will have plenty and plenty and plenty of labor. And we're desperate to find jobs for all of those North Koreans. If the North Korean regime collapses, you're going to have to find jobs for all of those North Koreans, and it's going to be very, very difficult to find employment to keep those people employed so they can survive until they can recover from the collapse of North Korea. How would you respond to that? Owen Tech? Or Kang Tong-un? Or Marie?
Let me see. I think unification with North Korea is practically impossible, and even if unification is carried out, I don't think the fertility rates will rise immediately due to the difficulty in economic development in the short term.
Yeah. Before the pandemic, North Korea's a population was actually growing every year. Even though it's a very poor place, its population was growing every year, apparently because, you need to have children if you want to survive in that country. You need to have children take care of you if you get old. You need to have children to take care of you. So even though it's a very poor country, the North Korean population was getting bigger every year until, I don't know what happened since the pandemic. Nobody knows really what's going on in North Korea since the pandemic started, right? But so that has been a claim that, Goldman Sachs did a study several years ago after I got here, claiming that it would cost South Korea $2.2 trillion, 2.2 trillion US dollars to integrate the North economy north into the South economy if the North Korean regime collapsed. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that, what are they talking about? Building roads and railroads and roads and electricity stations, infrastructure, in other words, infrastructure. But they also said it would be a big boost for the South Korean economy in the long term because of the natural resources, the resources in Korea, including population. They actually have lots and lots of workers that you could pay pretty cheaply. So that might be one argument against immigration, but who knows if and when the North Korean government will change. And Kang Tong-un.
Yes. The large-scale immigration is not the only one solution to solve the economic problem. There are many solutions substitute for immigration because many people doesn't want to take the a large number of immigration, especially Korea or Japan. Yeah, so there are many solutions to fix economic, such as technology development or AI, using AI or using robots. So,
yeah.
Yeah, we can substitute for hard workers.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, when I got here, until again, before the pandemic, the word was there were over 1 million people living in South Korea who were not born here. And that includes me. So, all those people that teach English, but 1 million out of 48 million, that's not insignificant. South Korea has moved a lot more quickly than Japan to open up its economy to immigration. Only now are the Japanese moving to begin to allow more immigration because they have even a worse demographic crisis than in South Korea. I mean, it's some incredible number of people are going to be old in the percent. I mean, and so, but I think it's because of Japanese nationalism. It's South Korean state is different because it's divided. The nation is divided into two states, and South Korea has always been more focused on cooperation with the international community in order to win the Korean War and develop and beat North Korea, and it's always been more open in that sense. But the Japanese have been much more slow to bring in immigrants, even though they need them. But it's only now, and it's difficult. It's politically not because of Japanese nationalism. It seems to be more difficult to get that happen, have that happen in Japan than it is in South Korea. But that notion about North Korea and that being a source of labor, I've just remembered that. Remember reading that several years ago. That that would solve so many of South Korea's problems, economic problems, if they had access to all of the resources of North Korea. Marie.
Yes.
You can read your pro statement.
Like in general, me and Owen Tech, we had like most of the same arguments. I think some things I wanted to add is that just in general, when a country has more inhabitants, more immigrants, it leads to, of course, more labor force and people that pay taxes, and it also increases like the government. So it's always better for the economy in general if the government budget increases.
Yeah, I mean,
and yeah, I was just talking about the Treaty of Rome and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much, again, you told me your family originally came from Kyrgyzstan, but I don't know, like, if you have any family ties, but like before the pandemic, hundreds of thousands of people were moving from the former Soviet republics to find jobs in Russia because there weren't enough economic opportunities at home, and they face a lot of racism. They faced a lot of racist attacks in Russia. Even though, I mean, again, the Russians need this labor for whatever reason, but again, they're very nationalistic, and so I don't know. Again, what happened since the pandemic, I don't know, but there was lots and lots of people that were working in Russia and sending their money back home to their families back in in Central Asia or the Caucasus, and so
I think that happens in a lot of countries.
Yeah.
It happens in every country. And
yeah, go ahead.
I just think that the example you gave about North Korea, like collaborating with South Korea, it's the perfect example. I think it would collapse if they would work together. Like, okay, the economy would grow, but politically, I think it would be a whole mess and it would be so chaotic, and there would be so much hate in the country in general. So I don't think that would also be a good idea.
I mean, it's a scenario that's hard to imagine. I mean, there's evidently significant cultural differences between North and South Korea after all these years, but they've got major infrastructure problems in North Korea. So you can just imagine the different scenarios, in terms of, but I mean, they pointed out in that Goldman Sachs report that's, I think, at least 10 years old by now, that North Korea has hundreds of billions, if not more, worth of mining resources. South Korea has very little mining resources. They've got some agricultural land here, but that's about it. All of the mine, for uranium, gold, that's all located in the north. And not to mention the human resources, the potential labor resources. So we just and we'll wait to see what happens. But yeah, so I was going to make another point, and I can't remember what it was, but about in terms of the cultural policies and the job policies, this all becomes very sensitive in the European Union because, it's highlighted in the book. The European Union has got to be very sensitive about nationalism, and often domestic policies in terms of social policies are very sensitive topics. So the European Union insists, for years and years that it doesn't want to impose or make abortion services legal as a requirement of being in the European Union. So abortion is still technically illegal in Germany. Abortion is now mostly illegal in Poland. And until recent, well, relatively recent, was illegal in Ireland too. But then when you think about, well, if you're really going to have a single market with free movement of labor, there are pressures that if you want to bring, if a woman wants to go to Poland to get a job from Hungary, how is she going to, is it fair that if she goes to Poland, she's not going to be able to get an abortion if she needs an abortion? And there was a scandal in Ireland over this, right? That there was I think a woman who came from South Asia. She was a dentist or something working in Ireland, and she got pregnant and then she got sick, and she had to have an abortion to save her life. And the doctors would not do the abortion because they were not certain that they would not be punished, prosecuted for crime because abortion was illegal. And they could not get around to doing the abortion to save her life. So that woman who was an immigrant from Ireland, she died because she couldn't get the abortion done in Ireland from sickness. And that caused a big scandal. And now I think abortion is technically legal now in Ireland. And the European Union, they talk about women's rights and women's emancipation as the big focus of their concern, but they have to be very politically astute and very politically careful. They know, as these European Commission members are, they're highly advanced politicians, senior politicians in their countries who become European Commission members. So they know about politics. They know about winning elections. They know about nationalism. They know about limits on decisional latitude. They know about what they have some good idea what they can and cannot politically do right now. And they know they have to be careful. And they will be careful about justice and home affairs issues, even as, again, we continue to see, the immigration capabilities of the European Union get stronger and stronger and stronger because they need to act more effectively to deal with migration crises. But okay, so let me have you vote on who won the debate. So please vote on who won the debate and make sure you can see that. Where did it go? Okay, just a second here. So share screen. Go back to there. And okay, so please vote on who won the election, pro or con. And okay, well, I guess that's everyone. All right, so yeah, so the notes, again, I haven't gone through the notes too much because it's just a matter of I don't want to go over what you read, but social policy, they have to, it's always politically very sensitive, right? That, and it's unavoidable that sooner or later, the European Union neo-functional spillover has to deal with all of these issues. So for example, came up during the Greek financial crisis in 2009, 2010. Greece you could retire at an incredibly young age in Greece. You could retire when you're 55. How can you retire when you're 55? So that's a Greek social policy. And only when Greece went into economic crisis was the European Union feeling like it had the political capability to tell the Greeks, you have to raise your retirement age. And of course, everybody in Germany knows that, those Greeks, why should we be giving those lazy Greeks bank loans when, you can retire when you're 55? It's ridiculous. We don't want to give those Greeks our hard-earned money as German taxpayers. And that's what the Alternative for Germany party first began with, protests against the bailout for Greece as part of the Eurozone. And then it sort of faded away as the Greek debt crisis ended. And then it came back when the migration crisis began. The Alternative for Germany found a new issue. And now they're fighting against the vaccines. Okay, that's it for today. So thank you for coming to class. So we're not going to have class on Monday. We're not going to have class on Monday because I'm going to be on a plane flying back to Korea. Okay, And I think the whole university is not having in-school classes on that day because I think there are exams happening. National college entrance exams are happening around the whole country. So I was told anyway that, you know, on Monday, we're not allowed to go to class, but we're not going to have class on Monday because I am going to be unable to access the computer. Okay. So I will, I already posted the assignment for week 13, the notes, they'll come up on Saturday. So you'll submit a paragraph, of course, by next Thursday for the reading, but we will have class a week from today. Okay. Bye.
Bye.